North Korea is issuing a new warning to the United States after a week of pretty tough talk coming from the Trump administration. On Thursday, Pyongyang, that's the seat of government in North Korea, warned of a super mighty preemptive strike. At a news conference with Italy's prime minister, President Trump would not respond to questions about the mental health or mental state of Pyongyang's young leader, Kim Jong-un. But the president did comment on supposed progress the U.S. has been making in the region.
As far as North Korea is concerned, we are in very good shape. We're building our military rapidly. A lot of things have happened over the last short period of time. I've been here for approximately 91 days. We're doing a lot of work. We're in very good position. I have great respect for the president of China. As you know, we had a great summit in Florida and Palm Beach, and got to know each other, and I think like each other. I can say from my standpoint, I liked him very much, I respect him very much, and I think he's working very hard. I can say that all of the pundits out there are saying they never have seen China work like they're working right now. Many coal ships have set back, many other things have happened. Some very unusual moves have been made over the last 2 or 3 hours, and I really have confidence that the president will try very hard. We don't know whether or not they're able to do that, but I have absolute confidence that he will be trying very, very hard.
To add to our conversation, I want to bring in the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Christopher Hill. He is now dean of the Joseph Korbel School of International Studies at the University of Denver. He comes to us via Skype. Ambassador and dean, great to have you with us. I want to ask you about the Time Magazine Influential 100 in a second, because you wrote a profile of Kim Jong-un there. But I first want you to address what the president said today, that there are moves that the Chinese are taking that they've never taken before that ought to offer those experienced in this region some sense of encouragement that China really is engaging in a way it hasn't before. Question one, is that true? And secondarily, what moves have you seen, if it's true, that really matter?
Ever since Kim Jong-un took power, the Chinese are obviously containing their enthusiasm for him. They don't like him. They've never invited him to Beijing. They've downgraded their relations with North Korea. So these are kind of incremental changes. I think what's happened more recently, though, is the Chinese, like the rest of us, have come to the conclusion that North Korea is intent on developing a deliverable nuclear weapon. And I think the Chinese have finally grown to understand that this is something that no American president can tolerate. So I think they're trying. The question is, what are they doing, and whether they're going to be successful? Because so far, we have a North Korean leadership that seems to be undeterred from its mission of creating a deliverable nuclear weapon that can somehow not only threaten its neighbors, but also implicitly threaten the United States and cause the United States and South Korea and Japan to somehow not have a solid alliance. So this is a work in progress, to put it mildly.
When the president talked about coal shipments being reversed, what is he talking about? Does that catch your ear in a particular way? And also oil is a part of this equation, too, from China to North Korea, is it not?
That's correct. These are issues the Chinese have agreed to do for a long time, and now they're finally starting to do them. They announced that they would not purchase any more coal shipments from North Korea a couple of months ago. And more recently, there was a dramatic little incident of a North Korean ship full of coal being turned back to North Korea. So that's a good sign. Now, of course, China may be importing less coal overall. And in fact, if you look at overall Chinese-North Korean trade, they've been trading a lot with North Korea. So it's a little too early to be declaring victory in terms of working with China, but it's clearly the right strategy. And the president seems enthused. And so that's a good thing.
Now, Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, is on Time Magazine's list of the most 100 influential people of the year. And you actually wrote the profile of Kim Jong-un, and I want to quote one part of that. After 5 years in power, there are no signs that the mercurial and corpulent Kim is mellowing. I think you're trying to say not only are there no signs of that, but there may be signs that he's hardening.
Yeah, I think he has, for a long time now, he has shown no interest in the negotiating process that his father was engaged in. Part of the reason is he really doesn't care what the Chinese think. He certainly doesn't care what we think. So these tests of nuclear weapons, of missiles, it's not so much testing the Trump administration. You know, it isn't always about us. It's really about testing military systems. And he has really accelerated that process. And certainly that display he put on last weekend in that parade suggests that it's a regime that is pretty much going forward as fast as it can to threaten others with nuclear weapons.
Now, this week, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the United States is considering adding North Korea back to the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Explain to our viewers why it was taken off, when that happened, and what effect do you think this might have if North Korea is put back on that list?
The North Koreans wanted to be removed from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. We felt that they were, this is back during the Bush administration, we felt that they, by the statute, they had not engaged in any terrorist activities in this time set out by the statute. So we were prepared to do that, provided they did some things. And what they did was they disabled their new plutonium reactor and blew up the cooling tower. So we were prepared to take them off that list. But I want to stress that list is mainly a symbolic list. It, for example, the two major provisions of it mean that the United States cannot give economic assistance to a country on that list, nor can the United States sell military equipment to a country on that list. So it's not too much of a stretch to suggest we have no intention of doing either things with North Korea. So this is more of a symbolic gesture, and I think of far less importance than the fact that China is beginning to implement important sanctions.
And of course, as you know well, Ambassador, South Korea is an enormous part of this conversation, and it will elect a new president next month. How is the politics of that race influencing the calculus for the Trump administration, and how might it affect the ability of the administration to pressure North Korea going forward?
The country we care about in the Korean Peninsula is indeed South Korea, the Republic of Korea. That's the country that we have the alliance with, and that's the country that we need to work with very carefully. We've done that for 50 years. We need to do that for another 50 years. We need to be close to that country. So one of the most important things we need to do is to make sure that the politics of that country do not, as they did in the early Bush administration, start lining up against the U.S., suggesting that the U.S. wasn't doing enough consulting, suggesting that the U.S. wasn't doing or was not willing to negotiate. So we have to be a little careful not to see those problems repeated. They have a president who's now been impeached and in prison. They have two candidates, one of whom is kind of or somewhat not pro-American, I can put it that way. The other is closer to the United States. And so it would be in our interest to keep the United States out of the presidential campaign and not allow forces that are kind of anti-U.S. or feel that the U.S. kind of lords over Korea or doesn't really pay attention to what the Koreans think. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so I hope we'll have the wisdom from this new administration in Washington to deal with that.
Ambassador Hill, this is an important conversation. You've advanced it for me and for our audience. I thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk to you about this again.
My pleasure.